Hello, everyone. This is Ian Williams, President of the Foreign Press Association. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to talk to my old colleague, is a hard word. I was covering him on the press from the Security Council when he was the President of the Security Council. And we were both concerned about happenings in the Balkans and elsewhere. And Diego was on top of it because he was trying to make sure that the UN actually did something about these situations and didn't just mutter sovereignty and let them get on with it. So, Diego, when we spoke last, you were still, I wouldn't say in a state of shock, but you were still, you hadn't managed to digest the events of what had happened. Yeah, you're obviously shocked by it, and you were sort of the fact that it had happened, and were considering the implications both for Venezuela and for the US. And I think, if I may summarize, I think the issue was that glad to see Maduro gone, but worried about the consequences domestically by the people they put in. And also, I think some reservations about Trump's disregard for international alliances and law. How have your views developed on this since then?
I was, like you said, so surprised, but I had the original reaction that this was President Trump coming to our help as a liberator and not as a conqueror. That which seems to me today to be the case when President Trump said, I am now governing Venezuela. Venezuela is under my control. I mean, we were so happy for what he did of decapitating Maduro, because actually President Trump has been the only president, the American president, who really taken us seriously, but not this seriously, in which he's now talking of oil more than our freedom, our democracy. Actually, those words do not appear in his statements, neither democracy, neither freedom. What appears often is oil, oil, and oil. And we are a little bit more than oil. And that's what's really today, actually, we have 1,000 prisoners. Instead of saying, we're going to liberate the prisoners, he said, I'm getting 50 or 60 million barrels of oil from Venezuela, which is to him much more important than our 1,000 prisoners.
I mean, at the moment, it looks like he's unilaterally trying to impose the type of US sanctions that were imposed on Iraq, which you may remember were disastrous and led to a disaster and began, well,
Yeah.
it didn't begin, but it accelerated the breakdown of the international world order.
Absolutely. And when he appointed Maduro's vice president, is a lady, who is as bad as he is, he said that she has been talking to them, to the US, and she will follow the instructions from the White House. But then you see that around Ms. Rodriguez, her name, is surrounded by the same group of thugs, some of them in the United States list where they're offering rewards. So a lot of criminals left intact. And then President Trump says, we have very good relations with the people who are in charge. But the week before, he was calling for this group of narco-terrorists, etc. Now, this group is appeals to him as the best assurance that we can go through a transitional process.
So basically, he's gone to the mafia, taken away the godfather, and let them pick another godfather to run the show.
Well, but when he says, the country is under my power. If that's the case, he's today responsible for the 1,000 prisoners that still haven't given them freedom. So, well, if you are the president, you are ruling the country, liberate the 1,000 prisoners that Venezuela has illegally. That hasn't happened. And some of the most fanatical Venezuelan members of the gang, like Cabello and Padrino, are attacking the United States, are promoting demonstrations. But at the same time, President Trump says, we have a very good relationship with them. You know, it's something that at least I cannot decipher very well.
But he's saying let them demonstrate as long as I get the money,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is a very Trumpian way of looking at the world.
yeah, I never thought, oil has always been part of the Venezuelan equation since we discovered oil. This is not only happening in Venezuela, it's an oil-producing country. It has happened in many other countries. But besides that, we became fully developed in a certain country that play a role in the international affairs, etc., which was replaced by this gang of terrorists. The person who called them a gang of terrorists was Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, these narco-state people are under your rule, and they are cooperating with you. This would be like when the Allies went after Hitler, he would have left Goering and some of the other people stay in the government. No, they went after Goering and the other people who were part of the Nazi scheme. Here, it seems their only interest in preserving somebody who would make sure that they get the oil, but that's it.
Since you're invoking that precedent, it was the United States that insisted on unconditional surrender for the Nazis as well.
Exactly.
Some of the other allies were prepared to compromise as long as Hitler went.
Here, well, I look at the videos and you see Ms. Rodriguez surrounded by the same criminals. And I said, my God, they're all there. And the people in Venezuela in the streets are not going out in masses because they are being persecuted. Even more, since the day that Trump said he's in charge of the country, the security police in Venezuela were going around the country to see who is siding or who is promoting or speaking in favor of the United States policy and put him in jail. So actually they're becoming even much more defiant since that day than before.
Now, do you think that is there any evidence that he has a private deal with Delcy Rodriguez sort of bypassing the others? Is she just being how should we say, a juggler, and she's wanting to keep them on side at the same time she gets Trump on side?
To begin with, she doesn't have force of her own. No, her brother is the president of the National Assembly, but he doesn't have the armed forces. The only two persons who are really in power today is the Minister of Defense, Padrino, and Cabello, which is the head of all these thugs in charge of intelligence, etc. But she, remember when President Trump said, talking about Ms. Machado, that she didn't have the support of the country. And I think he was meaning that he didn't have the support of the armed forces. Well, now that he is replacing with another lady, Ms. Rodriguez, I kind of doubt that she'll be able to resist the impact on the influence of the military.
Well, you don't think that some of the military, being pragmatic, would rather cut a deal with the US so that they keep taking at least a share of the money that's being looted?
It could be. Could be. I don't, actually, we've been trying to promote that for a long time. But the reason that today you don't see anybody in the streets complaining about the arrangement or celebrating the arrangement is because they see them in television, Cabello, and the same people are in charge. So the Venezuelans, being a country that have suffered so much, they stay in their homes.
Moving internationally, Maria Corina Machado has, well, she's upset a lot of people with her fulsome praise for Donald Trump, who is clearly not a, who is clearly a bad actor from this evidence. And I know you're in the opposition coalition, so you have to be careful about this. But the idea that she could hand the Nobel Peace Prize over to Donald Trump, who's just announcing that he's seized another country's oil, it seems even more far-fetched than when she got it. So, I mean, it has very bad optics with the rest of the world. Much of the non-aligned was behind with Venezuela in the past and saw this, but this is going to evaporate support, surely.
You know, I have not spoken to her about this, but if I put myself in her shoes, when you have that the only American president who's willing to help you is Trump, and he could be angry because he didn't get the Nobel Prize, I would do anything necessary, even to give him the money of the Nobel Prize in order to keep his support, knowing his personality. And actually, before yesterday, President Trump said, yes, she's a very nice lady. She's coming Tuesday or Wednesday, you know, like in a White House tour. And I, in the Venezuelan paper, the only one that still works, called El Nacional, there was interview about it yesterday, and I said that I thought that Ms. Machado should go with Gonzalez, the president-elect, because otherwise President Trump will see her as the Nobel Prize winner, and we'll talk about her, and they say, well, the finish time is finished, which reminds me in the conference that he has, for example, Zelensky comes, and sits Zelensky next to him, and allows one or two questions to Zelensky, but the rest, he is the one who answers the questions. So the same thing could happen in the case of Maria. That's why I thought that she should not give him the opportunity to only talk about the Nobel Prize. But instead, if she takes Augusto Gonzalez, the president, he has the legitimacy that the votes, even though were supported by her, but the votes aren't down to him.
But I mean, you say Donald Trump has been the only person who has been friendly to Venezuela. He's just announced he's going to take all of your oil.
Well, when I say he's the only one who has done something for us, he
Yeah.
imposed sanctions on those thugs, on those criminals, the way he calls them, and terrorists. He's the only one who has done it. And actually, he has gone much more, decapitated the head of this cartel de los soles, this sounds good, which is Maduro, is something that we all were so happy to see. But now, like I repeat again, to see that the whole team is there intact is something that at least worries me tremendously, because to begin with, they instill fear in our country. And second, that if this is the case, then the thugs are now even stronger than before. Because if you have an arrangement with the United States, who is the one who checks to see if you export drugs, is on your side, then you have a perfect game. You continue on and you give him the oil. Anyhow, the oil, we always sold the oil, so it's nothing new for us. So we could be in a worse situation, because it will be this gang now supported with the President of the United States.
Well, in the Middle East, even before oil, there was an old saying that my enemy's enemy is my friend. So that makes Trump a friend up to a point, but now he's really, how should you say, stretching that friendship. So, I mean, but that's what we would anticipate from Donald Trump's political career and his behavior. So, is the opposition prepared to cope with this?
I don't know, but to hear that he's saying that he has very good relationship with the people in power, and that he is happy with Mr. Rodriguez, actually is a blow under the belt. At least for me, I see that like I said to you before, I have a friend who wrote something about it that he thought that Trump was a liberator, not a conqueror. And that is the impression that is given to many Venezuelans who are able to express their opinion outside the country. Because if they give any opinion inside the country, they put him in jail. So even they become more fierce than before when Maduro was there.
And the other part is that there's a sort of dangerous precedent. I mean, President Trump is blowing up ships on the high seas, and I don't know whether they're part of the cartel or not, because no one ever paused to ask them, really. They just blew them out of the water and then shot them while they were drowning. So, no, you're a long-standing humanitarian. This is not the behavior of somebody who is going to Venezuela for the good of Venezuelans, is it?
But the problem in some parts of the analysis of my country that if we're talking about a regular government, everything that Trump has done is illegal. It's violation of all kinds of articles of the United Nations Charter, international law. But when you're talking that you are fighting against a terrorist gang, the terrorist gang cannot ask you to tell you, listen, you have to respect Article 5 of the Charter of the United Nations or any other article, because you cannot apply and expect that the government will use or respect all laws to attack a narco-terrorist group. On the contrary, there are to attack narco-terrorist groups, there are no laws. That's not a violation of anything.
One of the successes of terrorism, which I've studied over the years, is provoking the authorities into action that alienates
Who?
the people. And you if you think of France in Algeria, if you think of the Americans in Vietnam, you go in there and say these are terrorists, and then you devastate so many people that they end up supporting the terrorists.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to go that far, perhaps with Venezuela, but this is a serious risk for the opposition, surely.
Well, what I see is what I told you. I think they will be stronger if President Trump, he says he's ruling Venezuela, maybe by telephone or by internet, whatever it means. But he's saying that he is actually telling the gang that controls Venezuela, you can continue business as usual, because now the great enforcer is on our side. I think that's what he's facing today.
Yeah. Well, but Dulce doesn't need the armed forces because he got the US armed forces behind her.
Exactly. Well, you can imagine that what would have happened instead if President Trump would have said, I think Maria Corina Machado should assume the president of Venezuela, maybe with two or three other persons, sort of a junta or something, with the support of the United States. But he couldn't say that because he would not have automatic support of the gang. They have to do something about it to actually liquidate them. So he's betting that Mr. Rodriguez will be able at least to give him the oil he wants. But that's all. He will not get any more than the oil. Yesterday, for the liberation of Venezuelan politicians, they liberated 8. We have 1,000. And what happened is that Maduro has his own prisoners. Cabello has his own prisoners. Rodriguez, so groups who have put people in jail. So, and half of them are military. I would like to see that they liberate one military. Some of them are generals, colonels, or high ranking. Actually, in the last promotions at the military school, the best officers are in jail. The guys were number one in all these promotions. So, I would like to see what will happen if they liberate some of these people. That's really a test. The oil is not a test, because the oil, if you tell me you're going to buy it for me, that's wonderful. No, the problem is the political prisoners.
So what are the chances of the military seeing this and being upset enough to do something about it?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I would like to see some of the ones are in jail because they were considered to be leaders in the armed forces. And that's actually the moral reserve in great part that we have. These officers that thought differently, and because of that, they're in jail today. It's a moral and a very important reserve of officers that we have are in jail.
And the Venezuelan army has a lot of officers, doesn't it? A lot of generals.
Yeah. You
But
know, we were so happy the early morning when the Maduro was taken away. Venezuelans all over the world were celebrating. And when the cameras moved to Venezuela, no one was in the streets. Not one. People have become very submissive because they know how harsh the regime reacts and acts for even for a tweet. You make a tweet saying, how great that Maduro, they put you in jail. So they have trying to intimidate even more so that no Venezuelans will actually generate political opinion in the country.
so what happens now? What is are the opposition meeting to plan next steps and basically taking into account that Trump's hostility to them taking power if it gets in the way of his money?
You know, I think Ms. Machado, according to Trump, will be in Washington Tuesday or Wednesday. That day or next day, we will know which way this is turning into. And I would prefer not to anticipate my reaction. But I think that day we'll know where things are moving.
Well, let's leave it there because we don't know where it's going.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could tell you, but
No, I see no crystal ball in front of you, so you're
yeah.
quite understandable that you can't tell us.
And my crystal ball is Korean. It's not working very well.
Well,
Okay.
let's catch up again soon and follow on after perhaps the meeting at the White House.
Big hug to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Diego.
Thank you.